and welcome back to Hidden Home Technology, where we really badly talk about all things audio, video, tech, and I guess interior design, lighting design, things like that. Today, though, I'm welcoming back Matt after a couple of months of leaving me with the Gryphon Diablo 333 and the Martin Parker Duo Diamond. Said that right? In this episode, though, we're going to be talking about what I found with the 333. So it's like I'm reviewing it to your face. You're going to have to listen to everything I say.
I'm allowed to playbacks on the text messages, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could do. Yeah, the voice notes I sent, they don't exist. So basically I reviewed it, I guess, in the context of the Diablo 333 versus the Macintosh MA12000, and to tease the video, which one will win. You'll have to stay tuned to find out. So background on the Diablo 333, or I guess Gryphon as well. Effectively, they're Danish. There you go, fact number one. Interesting. The 333 replaces the 300, which is a bold move, given the 300, I think, was their best-selling product in all of history. It contains trickle-down tech from the Commander Apex. I think that, I don't know exactly, but the most notable, I think, is the output transistors and other bits on the output stage of the power amp side. It's been broadly, I think, well, not just broadly, but I think universally well received by the press so far. Can't find a bad word about it.
No.
Build quality is unbelievable. I touched on that again on my next card, so I'll probably repeat that a few times. And then we'll explore, does it live up to the hype? Is it as good as the 300? Is it better than the 1200, the MA12000 even? Stay tuned. So as I touched on, touted as the world's best integrated amp, it delivers 333 watts into 8 ohms, very specific, 666 watts, very ominous, into 4 ohms, and 1100 watts into 2 ohms. So it is a beast. And
it is.
I can't really think, well, without some, just odd examples really of any speaker that is going to require, it might benefit from more than that, but require more than that to sound as good as it's ever going to. Technically speaking, internally, it's a Tom Moeller design, who I think is the chief tech engineer at Gryphon. So it's had the big brain on it. And design-wise, likewise, it's a Flemming Rasmussen, the founder of Gryphon. It's his last design before he upped and left. Not sure what the story is there. I assume he sold it because it's successful and retired. It was his last aesthetic design, which, like I said, doesn't come across in pictures or even, like I said, from across a room, really.
No, it's nothing like seeing it in the flesh.
Yeah, and interacting with it, actually touching it, you realise just the level of, I guess, fit and finish and detail that's gone into it. And again, technically speaking, inside, it's got a very special volume control. It's a relay volume control, which I think most high-end stuff strive to be able to implement. There's budget in it for this one. And true to their short signal path philosophy with the Diablo 333, that volume control will never introduce more than 2 resistors in the circuit in order to attenuate the volume. So you get either 1 or 2, depending on which stage on the volume control you're at. So that's the kind of background. I'm then going to, I guess, now start discussing like what I think and what I've come across with it so far. So build quality wise, solid and stout are what my notes say. Good words. It's just a beast. It's like a behemoth. But somehow it's subtle as well. Like there's this probably a bit like how it sounds as well. Run your hand on anything like heat sinks, joints between bits on it, the touch screen, you just sort of can't find an edge on anything. No. Even though it sort of, is multiple pieces, it's mega.
Yep. It's well engineered and well finished. I mean, there's no sharp edges. It's not easy to lift, but even when you do lift it, you're not having sharp edges of heat sinks dig into your arm, and it's.
I've dealt with like Chord Electronics before, and they do some really cool stuff like the Integra rack legs and stuff like that, and it feels a bit like that, the adjustable conical feet underneath, just everything on it. But I'd say even above chords finishing, really, to some extent. I don't really know how I can perceive that, because I can find a fault with chords finishing, but somehow it seems more complete and perfect on the Gryphon. It's awesome.
I'd say everything just feels solid. It's a well engineered, well built machine that has caused some pain to me.
I can't disagree. Me and Jess, who's behind camera today, we had to try and get it, because I use those whatever they're called, the isoacoustics isolators. I was using them as much after destroying Sam's coffee table here with the Gryphon. I was trying not to destroy my situ can't be replaced cyborg for the hi-fi. I was trying not to destroy it with the sharp conical feet whilst I was just getting it wired up and stuff. So we were trying to balance it on top of these feet, and it was hard to maneuver, especially when you can't stand behind the rack. The remote, I anticipated hating it, because it's, effectively like a homemade remote, it's made in-house. It's billet aluminium, and again, bringing back to Chord Electronics, they used to do a billet aluminium one with like ball bearing buttons, and it was okay, but combined with their funny motorized volume controls, it was just always a bit weird to use. And I was expecting a sort of repeat of that, and not, being like edgy about getting onto the control system so I could use the iPad or whatever, or the, proprietary control system remote to control it. But actually, I love it. It's really responsive. You don't really have to point it in the right direction. It seems like the IR output's pretty generous, and the receiver's well positioned so that you don't get a sense that it's like an infrared remote. You got to like stab at it.
It's also, it's probably the bit of the hi-fi is used the most. So it's got to be good quality. It's got to feel good in the hand.
And it's pretty cool. It's got that like foam on the back. So if you've got a nice coffee table or something, the billet aluminium doesn't ding and scratch it. And the touchscreen is hyper responsive. I'd say like it almost feels better than the phone or something, which is mad.
That's come down from the Commander preamp, so it's
so where they've dug it out, I mean, whether they have glued in an iPhone into the front or something and done that, I don't know, but like you go to touch anything, the power button, it's not over sensitive in the sense that you sort of brush past it turns on or anything like that, but you don't need to poke it. You don't feel, there's no delays in the response, so you don't ever get to that point where you're like stabbing at the touchscreen. It's really nice. And I can see it from across the room perfectly well, which is great. You know what input you're on. And you know what volume you're on.
The menu structure is quite straightforward as well.
It is, even if you go to the elaborate one, or whatever they call it, advanced menu layout.
A lot of these machines, they tend to have quite over complex menu systems.
I think one of the reviews I was reading about it put it like, there is neither anything missing or anything extra in those menus. It's just everything you need and nothing more. So that's enough of the kind of like the physical. I'm now getting to like what it sounds like.
So the one you had the DAC and the phono stage?
It did, yes, fully loaded. And I have to confess, I haven't tested any of that. I had enough fun without doing that, to be honest. But I guess that is one thing like vaguely inconvenient, is the XLR input on the phono board is very unique. I don't know of any other phono stage that does that. Gryphon swear that it's absolutely vital. So for the turntable I've got, that would mean ordering a lead. I didn't want to use adapters really and then judge it on that, and that'd be an issue. But to be fair, I had so much fun streaming because I got a handful of amazing streamers, and so much fun rediscovering music, as spoiler alert, that I didn't need to go reach for the vinyl to like get anything vinylly coming out of it, because it had all the naturalness and fun factor anyway. So anyway, like I said, spoiler alert there, don't say too much. So what's it like? I've got a really cheesy word I got cringe saying, but it's like had like sort of boogie factor. It's not like engaging, which would have almost like a negative connotation, like it's hard work, like you've got to actually listen to it. It's engrossing. Like there is just so much fun to be had listening in, and it's easy to do. It's like it's not hard work. It's not like intellectual listening in.
No.
Although I was getting that way with the musicians and stuff. It's just like so much fun. There's so much like drive and like orchestrations come alive. I was sat there like conducting the band. It's like, there's that bit and the drummer's doing this. It's just, it was epic.
I think, you say you get a different insight into the music, and again, not trying to put words into your mouth or recite some of the ones you said earlier. It allows you to rediscover some of your record collection or your music. So for context,
to give Matt a little bit of a heads up, he met me at the demo room and I played him some of the songs that I mentioned specifically later on as I get through my cards. just so he knew where I was coming from and he could, agree or disagree. But even then, I got carried away and played a few extra songs that I don't mention just because I wanted to hear some more stuff. But it is, I don't want to jump the gun on, sort of the spoiler alerts. But yeah, it's just so engrossing and rewards you with when you do listen deeper as well. So it's like superficially amazing, yeah, intellectually even more fascinating, I think. So first track I want to talk about was Run the Numbers by Everything, which I did play you. And there's like the guitars start coming in for the first chorus and there's like this sort of reverb around them and it just makes them sound huge, like off the scale huge. And like when I had it quite loud the first time I put it on and that sort of, it like adds a sort of dynamic level. It like comes up in volume quite a lot for this sort of slow build up to the front end of the track. And it was just like amazing. I was like hearing this guitar riff for the first time. It was, and not just for the first time, it's so like oversaid. It was like in a new way. Like it was just so cool.
It's excitement. It's, music is about sort of emotional connection, emotional moments. Yeah. And hearing that guitar riff for the first time should be exciting. It should, every time you put the system on, it should be exciting.
Yeah, and it does. It doesn't, so far in the, whatever it is, a month or something, I've had it plugged in now because I have to confess it was a ginormous doorstop for a while whilst I listened to the Martins without changing the amplifier. I wish I put it in to start with, to be honest. It's amazing. And that was that sort of first thing. So that first chorus coming in was amazing. But then I started noticing there's like I think it's on the second chorus or something, there's like a extra guitar riff comes in. It's like, I can only describe it as almost like punctuation of like the song, it's got all these extra layers that come in and accent parts of the orchestration. And it was just so cool again. It was like, and as a guitarist, as a musician, I played guitar, bass and drums. It was like...
At once?
Yeah, at once, like a one-man band. You've seen him with the cymbal on the head, so that's me. No, it's like I played guitar as a kid quite well. I say quite well, into the sort of band standards and stuff like that. I then needed a bassist in a band I was playing in, so I became that. And I've always wanted the drums. And so years ago when my nan passed away, she left me like £1,000 with a note saying to do something fun with it. Don't save it. Don't be boring. So I bought a drum kit.
Amazing.
And yeah, so rather than when I've been in bands just sitting behind the drum kit and being terrible, I wanted to be a little bit better. So I bought that and I dabble in that. I keep it in my shed. So whenever I mow the lawn and go get the mower out, I'll sit behind the kit for like 5 minutes. But so I play the same thing over and over. But yeah, it's it's something I love. So anyway, I was like just hearing like the orchestration, the mix, what had been designed into that song by professional musicians, people amazing at writing tunes. Suddenly I'm sort of hearing it so clearly and obviously and so rewardingly. It's like, it's massively addictive.
Yep.
And you hear the energy they're putting into it, like how they are smashing the cymbals in rock songs and how the bassist is trying to like drive it through. And we're talking about the bass, I'll talk about it in another song, but yeah, there's a quality to that bass where, again, I'm going to mention Chord Electronics. It's, their like leading edge transient response is mega.
Yep.
And it does something that makes toroidal transformer amps sound soggy in the bass. I think somehow that Gryphon does both. It's got the leading edge transients of like a chord, but with the tonal color of something like the Mac. So it's got like the start of the note from the chord and the end of the note from the Mac, and so it's got everything. It's wicked. It's got so much control and drive down there. That'll be a repeated comment all the way through.
It's looking good so far.
It's all right. I'll give you that. Yeah. So yeah, the punctuation, but I think I've got here like presence, detail, separation, the crunch of guitars and things like that. It finds that detail, not in the very highest of frequencies, but somewhere quite satisfying in the mid-range in what I'm calling a crunch region. And Jess and I looked that up as a thing for like sound engineers. What region does crunch come from? And actually it was exactly what I predicted with Jess in conversation. I was saying there's like a presence in like, I think it's like 2 to 5 kilohertz or somewhere in there. Maybe it's just jacked up ever so slightly by that amp, but if it is, or, maybe it's not sucked out like it might be in other amps, but whatever it is so well judged. It's unreal because it doesn't feel like it's uneven. It just displays continuous detail across all elements of a mix, even complicated mixes, in space and time in front of you, absolutely continuously. With the Macintosh, by comparison, when I went back and put it in afterwards, what you sort of found was elements of the mix would sort of move forward and then they'd move back again. It could hold a number of them if the production was there for, continuously as well. But it had this sensation that it would go back into like a watercolor vague background. And there'd be one or two things present, like the vocalist or snare drums or kick drums or something. But they would sort of instantaneously pop forward and then go back. Whereas the Gryphon does this thing where it feels like everyone's there all the time. And
that Tom Waits track you played.
Oh God, yeah, I'm coming on to that. Yeah,
that is, to me, that was out of all the tracks, it's the one that it really
was so obvious, wasn't it? Yeah. I said about the energy of the musicians coming through, music's brought to life. Like I said, the drummers smashing stuff, bassist driving. So that's Run the Numbers, great tune by Everything. Next on my list is a bit more of a subtle electronic thing. It was Felix the Band's Dirty Nightgown. In fact, the whole album probably, but for the sake of the discussion, there's lots of sort of clicks, pops, textures, crunchy things in there. There's great bass lines and they're quite subby, so it's hard to control sometimes with amplifiers and certainly hard to give like a sort of a percussive element because it's that soft squidgy sub thing, but it still does that somehow incredibly well. But there's also some toms in there and you can kind of hear the skin tension on the reverb, but also you hear the pitch and tone of the different toms tracking. So when it's like a roll, you hear them going higher and lower pitches and I cannot stay, as like I said, as a drummer, to be able to sort of hear that element of a drum coming through so tangibly and like I said, so continuously. So it's not coming forward and drifting off. It's like throughout the entire duration that tom is reverberating, to hear all those details in it. At the same time as all these other things going on in the mix, having the same element of tangibility and continuous detail. It's just mad.
Yeah, I think it was like you said earlier, you start to hear or appreciate the musicianship of everyone within the track.
Yeah, I've come back to like be a great fan, and I said I looked at that Hi-Fi News link you sent me, and one of the like snapshots was the guy saying he wanted to give the amp a round of applause at the end of the song. And I'd literally had that moment with that Everything track where I was like, ooh, yeah, that was, like clap. And then I read that thing afterwards. I totally agree with him. I get it. It makes, whether it's the amp you're applauding or whether it's the music you're listening to, but it does bring that like engagement with the music, or the music's that bloody brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, that products should translate the music into a situation where that's what you want to do. You connect with it and it raises the hairs on the back of your neck. It makes you think back to a certain point in your life, whatever it might be, but there's an emotional connection. Yeah,
no, I said that to Jess actually. I was like, I was reading, I was listening to those songs, like thinking that it basically like sort of re-falling in love with the bands and hearing it like musicians. And I used to do that as a kid, like sort of feel like it was people playing to me somehow, because I was so in love with the bands. I think in the 90s it was a different thing. You'd have like 5 cassettes almost on your Walkman. And you would properly get to know all the band members' names and stuff. And so somehow you were like listening to them as humans. I was doing that again. I was like going, God, that drummer's, the way he's playing that is unbelievable, rather than sort of hearing it superficially again. It's so,
I think,
unbelievable. Yeah.
Being a musician gives you that other view into the track, that you can appreciate how hard they're playing, or, the complexity of the track, or even simplicity, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah, but I don't think you necessarily need to be a musician, because I would say I was listening to music before I was properly classed myself as a musician, but still knew the band members of my favourite bands, which I have to confess I don't know these days in the same way. Like I couldn't tell you Tom Waits' band or something, but I love a bit of Tom Waits. Whereas, go back to Red Hot Chili Peppers days in the 90s when Blood Sugar Sex Magic came out, I knew, it's Chad Smith. I knew it was, Anthony Kiedis or whatever. I knew everyone's names, and you were going, oh, he's, Flea's such an amazing bassist or whatever, or, it's all that kind of stuff. Tom Morello on guitar for Rage Against the Machine. Like I couldn't do that these days, but I'm listening to music like that again going, God, they're amazing musicians, and you can hear it. It's so cool. So the notes, just for everyone else's sake, I've got things like beautiful textures, rich yet percussive bass. So it's got that leading edge, like stab like a kick drum has, but it has afterwards, it's got like the full tone, the sustain, but yet it still maintains control, yet allows the bass to bloom. And all of these things are sort of like normally contradictions, like pick one, not the other.
Yep.
You're getting both. You really are getting both. Another good song which demonstrated actually all of these things was Counting Crows' Perfect Blue Buildings.
Yep.
The snare tone I've got, again, so engrossing to listen to, hearing the different types of strike on the snare. Like, I don't know whether he did or not, or whether he's picking up different sticks, but it almost feels like he's using those sticks where it's like 4 or 5 little canes, or 10 canes all sort of strapped together. And then he's using proper sticks and maybe even sort of brushes or something, whether he's flipping between or whether it's just the way he's hitting it. You hear this like all these variations, and it's done so nicely, little gentle rolls. It's a really sort of delicate piece of drumming. It's really clever how it sort of comes forward and back. And
in terms of the 333, it's, like you said earlier, it's a beast, but it can do delicacy so well.
And the funny thing is, I'd forgotten I'd written this down, but I've got like the dynamic rise and fall of the song, and I didn't know I had that on here, but I pointed that out to you when we were listening to it before we came over, how the song sort of swells up and drops off. It's just unbelievable. I've got the plucky guitar type thing, and the interplay of it in the arrangement, whether it's like a sort of banjo or something, I don't know, but there's this great little bit, it just sort of comes in, but it's not just that song where this is illustrated. Its ability, I think that Billie Eilish had it as well. There's some like strum strings in Your Power, and you could hear the sort of plectrum going down through the 4 or 5 strings that they were picking out of the chord. You can sort of hear it moving over. It's not like you hear it once and it's like the resonance after. Literally every string and like a sort of plucked chord was absolutely mad. I guess my next one is compared to the Mac. So, and this breaks my heart to some extent, because I was so in love with the Mac. Now it feels a bit like a toy, I have to confess.
A heavy toy.
Heavy toy, expensive toy. It's not to belittle the Mac though. The Mac is lovely, and one word I'd use when I put it back in, one thing it did do really well was it was very like ethereal, with like the reverbs and the watercolor background, I said, versus the slightly perhaps drier presentation of the Gryphon. It creates this, like lovely, almost bigger soundstage to some extent, but it's so much less focused, and it's not bigger. It's just like a sort of, perhaps gives this like taller, echoier space thing going on, but it felt perhaps light, less dense, almost slightly thin. It had softer bass. I described it to Jess as like marshmallow bass or like cloud-like bass. It lost the percussive leading edge, which as a bassist is really important. I know that you're meant to be sat there with the drummer helping drive the rhythm percussively as well as the pitch element. So the Mac does the pitch and it does the sustain and the bloom, but it doesn't do the percussive leading edge in the same way. And kick drums suffer from that slightly as well. They become softer and woollier. And I've got, it can't keep everything in focus simultaneously in the same way that the Gryphon does. And the Gryphon is such an extreme example of that. I was trying to think back last night about any other times in history where I've ever heard that. I think the only other time called electronics, it was the SPM 6000 monoblock, so like 1,000 watt monoblock. They're huge. They're in plan, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of that coffee table, with their reference preamp, so 8,000 pound preamp. This is going back to like early 2000s as well, so you got pretty double all this money. And I think they're about 9,000 pound for the monoblock, so it's like 18,000. Like it was 28,000, but times 2 now, so it's over like 50 grand amp or something. With a big pair of AE5s, and at the time it's the DAC 64 and the cool blue transport. Hearing that with a good friend and client, it was the same thing actually. Funnily enough, it was Counting Crows. It was one of the standout things that he liked at the time, and he put on. And I remember just thinking, "There's the drummer in front of me." At the time, that was actually what I thought. Weird that I should still be digging that recording back out.
It's a testament to how well it's recorded.
I think it is, but also I did forget about that recording for some time, and I don't know why I was listening to it again. I think it was actually when I had the Zen NG and stuff. It was bringing music back to life, and somehow that cropped up when I was scrolling through all my old albums in Rune. I picked it out and started playing it again, and actually it's really has just come on leaps and bounds. The Mac's cheaper. If you take out the things you get for free in the Mac, the $2,000 DA2 roughly, the Phono Stage, I guess, is probably similar money. If you were to try and buy it as an off-board box, you're probably taking out $6,000 out of that 19,000-ish retail. So it's a 13 grand base cost amp versus a £20,000 base cost amp.
25.
25 is it without anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you got to put a third of the money back in. But in terms of like diminishing returns, which is often a statement I massively disagree with, but don't often have a specific thing to counteract the comments with. There is no diminishing returns there. That Gryphon is so much better musically, not just hi-fi, but in terms of how much I'm loving music and how little you have to engage with it, like deliberate, conscious, active listening to enjoy it. It's mad. And I thought the Mac was a master of that, but yeah, diminishing returns, no.
The Mac is no slouch. It's a great product.
Yeah, it's great.
It retains, and will always will be. Mac's a brilliant brand. I have history there, and it's still a big part of my belief of product.
If you need a DAC and you need a Phono Stage and your budget doesn't go to the pushing 30 grand, but you could muster up the 19.
We've got the Diablo 120.
You got the Diablo 120. You'll have to prove that one to me. Yeah, you'll have to prove that to me. But 120 sometimes isn't enough.
No.
Sometimes. Probably quite often in my humble opinion, because I don't know why I love that grip and control of more power sometimes.
The Gryphon, I think, is a chunk more expensive.
It is a chunk more expensive, but you get
that performance. Yeah. I mean, I think like I've alluded to in the last podcast we did, there's a number of times where with my previous hat on, we had customers with doing a demonstration between Mac and Gryphon, and frustratingly for me at that point, quite a few people were going the Gryphon way.
I'm not sure I know that I've heard like the big dual mono Macs and stuff on the big pair of clips. Jess has heard that too. And that is another level from my system.
Yeah.
Probably my huge clips Jubilees, and tiny little Dyne audios, what do you expect? But there's still things those Dyne audios and that Mac or the Gryphon does that system didn't. But the scale and just transported thing of that huge system, clearly it's not like the Gryphon just trounces all other hi-fi, but there is something that Diablo 333 does that you just can't buy anywhere else, perhaps apart from Apex Commander, but then you need another however many square meters to house the system and however many zeros on the budget.
Apex, single Apex, similar size to that coffee table.
Exactly. So you could have 6 or 7 of the Diablos in there. So
I mean, the other thing I think is probably worth the mention. The Diablo is a premium integrator for sure.
Yeah,
but feedback from one particular reviewer was it rivals quite a lot of pre-powers.
Yeah, 100%. I'd agree with that. Yeah,
and he said it's one of the most impressive products he's had in the demonstration facility for.
I'd say I've had hi-fi moments with that I've simply not had before. Had before, no matter what, and that involves show systems, everything. I've got a few more songs as well, which actually I've touched on already. But and again, obviously it shows consistency because I didn't realize I'd written a card for this. But Billie Eilish's "Your Power," the strum on the strings, they're so real and so detailed. The reverb tails and layers and dynamics of the vocal. She does that thing where it's almost like whisper quiet, but to stop it becoming mumbling, and she sort of does slur and mumble, but she picks out the consonants perfectly so that you can still understand what she's saying. And the delicacy of the little clicks and pops on the consonants is mental. And the bass, I cranked it with Jess once actually, it's this huge dynamic bass line, although it's not, it's kind of like a big swelling bass line thing and like throbs, but there is like a sort of papery texture over the top of it, which I've never heard before. And it did that, it controlled the big swells and throbs, but still had this like texture on the top of it, which is unbelievable. So I've got bass, I've just put details, texture, pitch, extension, and control. It's just ridiculous. Didn't play you this one, but Birch Tree by the Foals.
Yeah.
It's got the same percussive rhythmic bass, the crunchy texture of snares, layers, parts, interplay of the arrangement and the band, constant detail in every part, but yet zero treble emphasis, so you don't get the fatigue.
No.
It's just like yeah, it shouldn't be right, but it shouldn't happen, but it does.
The other thing is, well, yeah, obviously, Dynaudio is a fantastic speakers you got there. When you put a 333 on a bigger speaker,
yeah, what's going to happen then?
The control it has of the bass drivers in particular is immense. You know, it'll unfold or give you even more.
Well, it forces, you can feel it forcing those Dynaudios to do stuff that, they don't get forced to do with the Mac. That's what I was saying about the percussion thing. But next card is what we talked about earlier, the Jesus Gonna Be Here by Tom Waits. Like, it's recorded in this weird echoey room, and it's so palpable on there that if you do, or even without shutting your eyes, you get this weird like duality sensation, like almost unease of like, oh my God, I'm in an echoey room, but I'm not in it because I'm not in an echoey room, but I feel like I'm in one. It's like a weird like illusion. Like
sort of looking from behind the console.
Through a glass panel into an echoey space, and you're hearing it. It's just mental. I've never experienced that before. When I've heard people saying about like acoustic information in recordings, as in like where it's recorded, I've never had something so palpable where I could probably, if I concentrated, actually draw the dimensions of the room that it's in. It's really weird, and how far down away from the mic, 'cause he's some distance from the mic, I think, to create that. Yeah. You could sort of draw that perhaps he's, like 15 feet back from the mic in an echoey space. It's just absolutely mad. So try it on your systems, everyone. Jesus Gonna Be Here by Tom Waits. I think it's on Bone Machine or something. It's such a cool illusion. I've had to go round my cardia, so I'm going to have to like concentrate to read this. But yeah, I've just put it transports me to the room he's in. It really does.
I think out of all the tracks you played me today, that was the one that really cemented everything you had messaged me.
Yeah.
In the last few weeks.
Yeah. About being late to pick up the kids because I got too engrossed and carried away. So getting to the wrap up, my last card here, basically, in general, what do I think? You can't have it back. That's the first thing. I'm keeping it. Tough luck. Or if you do want it back, you've got to get me a different one. I want one.
We can sort that.
I'm having it. It will become the new reference for anyone coming around if I've got 2 minutes or 5 minutes or half an hour of somebody's time to convince them that hi-fi is a thing and that's the amp I want to do it.
Yeah.
I've written down that proof of diminishing returns being complete nonsense because the golf in performance, the experiences I'm having, nothing has come even close. Like the leap up from sort of bog standard integrated or a bog standard any hi-fi, if you like, to the Mac, to then that leap to the Gryphon, the golf is wider on the leap to the Gryphon than it is the leap from a £2,000 Arcam or whatever it might be. I don't care. And as a side note as well, I've noticed because I use it for TV viewing, like Netflix and whatever else, there's something about the tonality and the drive of it that is absolutely brilliant for cinema. Sort of, the dynamic grip and control, and also vocal clarity, like intelligibility of everything. Yep. So I think it comes back to the thing of like hearing everything in the mix continuously. It's just so easy to hear what people are saying, switch subtitles off, when you're listening quietly, you can still hear. And even at the lower volumes, you get all the like grunt and dynamics, like gunshots or whatever they might be. I can't think of a specific example, but...
So you're going to put Essence monos as your...
Yeah.
Or your cinema specifications?
Yeah, I did. I said that though. Where I've used Storm Audio, where I haven't been able to use Wisdom for one reason or another, or it hasn't been the right tool for the job. In the cinema rooms, I definitely love to have a job where I could get commissioned to, choose and design the room. And if I do, I would be so intrigued to know what a stack of Gryphons would sound like. My instinct is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I would definitely, love that commission. Please, can I have some Gryphon in my home cinema? The answer would be a resounding absolutely. Yeah, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. So thank you so much for lending it to me and opening my eyes, because genuinely, I don't think you can convey how special it is by saying it's special on camera. Don't even think this does it justice. Like
No, like you said, the feedback globally for the product has been a resounding thumbs up.
Oh yeah, is it the world's best integrated amp? Absolutely. Well, it's the best one I've ever heard in the world ever. Yeah,
and there's some great products out there.
Yeah, I owned and lived with an amazing Chord Electronics integrated amp for some time. I would love to dig that back out. I've still got it in storage, and it just needs a little bit of work at Chords for some capacitors to be replaced because it's got that sort of funny crackle and fizz every now and again. But I'd love to sort of hear that, the Mac, because I do think it's like an amalgamation, like a best of both worlds. It's like it's transient, but it's bloomy and lovely. It's amazing. Thank you.
Not a problem.
See you next time. Oh yeah, housekeeping of like, subscribe, comment, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right, whatever. You'll all feed the algorithm. So please, see you next time.